all profit is value extraction. And that means that all profit is theft from you.
Corporate America is on welfare, and we've got to get them off welfare.
Last words on my lips. I am a revolutionary, and you're gonna have to keep on saying that.
Hello, and welcome to Cars and Comrades, where we talk about car stuff from a leftist perspective. This is part 2 of our discussion with automotive journalist James Gilboy, so buckle up and join us along the road to revolution. And remember to search for us on all your favorite social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. Just search for Cars and Comrades and you should be able to find us. Hopefully. You can also email us at carsandcomrades@gmail.com. We're happy to hear from listeners, if we have any. So email us suggestions, complaints, potential topics, or perhaps your own questions that we might address on the air. We don't really know what we're doing yet because we just started this, so we make no promises about answering. But you can shoot us a message and we'll do our best. Could you really ask for anything more than that? Anyway, let's get back into our discussion with James about lemons racing, MR2s, and automotive journalism.
All right. Hey, so we had a little break there and some recording trouble also. I think we got it all figured out, but I think Zach wasn't coming through. We couldn't hear him, so I don't know if on the final product it sounds like we're talking over him. It's not that. It's just we suck with technology. So
I might not have been able to hear him, but I was talking over him in spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're going to try and wrap things up, but Connor, you wanted to talk about, I don't know, I guess the freelance industry. Is that right?
Well, just, I know that James is doing some, car-related freelance journalism. So I kind of wanted to ask what was entailed, what that entails and what that industry is like and what, I can't imagine working in any kind of job where, I don't necessarily know what my paycheck's going to look like. I'm pretty used to, my check looks the same all the time, and I don't have to, submit a project. And if someone doesn't like it, well, I'm not paying my rent that month or whatever it is. I don't know if it's good or bad or, I don't know, maybe if we have listeners at this point or someone's going way back, maybe there's someone who's, interested in pursuing that. So I don't know what's kind of your experience been with it in general, James. I'm sure you know what to say more so than I know what to ask, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So my experience of working freelance is I have in total written for 3 outlets, basically. The Drive, which is where I've done almost everything. My relationship with them is sort of halfway between a freelance and a staff thing right now. I don't know officially what to call it, but they are bringing me into the fold more. But I can speak for my 3.5 years of definite freelancing. I got my start basically just by being paid by a Corvette blog to do a couple news posts, which were terrible, but they paid me a decent amount, and then everything else has been for the Drive and then a local blogger. So the thing is with the online media industry in general is working online media is a pretty desirable job, which is why you see so many people want to do it. It has a lot of potential perks, such as, work from home, set your own hours, possibly pursue whatever opportunities come your way. But because the online media, the line of work of, content creation in general is kind of so desired, it's extremely competitive.
Sure.
It's true in the automotive media industry. I don't know if I would say there is to speak broadly in economic terms that are not necessarily, there is there are a lot more people who are willing to tell you about cars than maybe there is appetite for people to listen to it.
That's what.
To
Yeah.
avoid-
Don't tell us that. We're just starting this podcast. Don't tell us that.
no. What I'm trying to say is, like, a lot of people want to work in this biz, but audiences can only absorb yay so much. It's really hard to get into people's faces, and it can be hard to say go professional. But I happened to get very lucky in getting a good gig at the Drive that actually gradually got better for me. I know a lot of people who do a lot of freelancing for a bunch of different outlets, and make a living doing it that way. It can be done. You got to build a lot of relationships to do that. It's still generally not what most people prefer to be doing. Some people can play it well and make a good living out of it. Some people are obviously very concerned about being able to afford healthcare and the like.
Yeah, sure.
And then also there's another type. So because this is kind of a cottage niche, this is a cottage industry, automotive media, a lot of people want to do it. So it's a lot of the lower to mid-level stuff doesn't pay that great, obviously. I would actually say, given my qualifications and my work experience, I have been paid pretty damn well throughout most of mine. I leapt from working at Subway, where I was being paid less than $10 an hour, to being paid $25 a pop for an article. That was huge and terrific leap for me, and things have only gotten better from there. That's not how I'm paid today. I don't know if I have anything in my current contract about discussing what I'm paid, but it is way better.
Yeah, please do. We encourage discussing what we're paid here. We are workers of the world trying to unite here, and discussing wages is always good for workers. So
I'm on
if you're comfortable with it.
I don't think we've actually ever discussed wages with each other.
We should do
very
that.
funny.
I mean, we're not getting paid anything for this. We're not making any money from the podcast, at least not yet. I don't know if we will ever, but so there's that.
If I ever make money from the podcast, I promise to spend it on car parts.
All right, so basically, the way a lot, or at least the way freelance writing works, because it doesn't just apply to the automotive industry, the automotive media industry, is, I mean, there are a bunch of pay models. Some of it is flat rate per post. Some of it is kind of per word. Some of it is basically they'll pay you or not pay you, whatever they please. I have pretty much always, okay, no, not always. For much of my time writing, it was being paid by the post, and there was sort of an approximate length advisory. And I did start out at $25, which I later gathered was kind of not like awesome for the industry. But when you come from working a sandwich shop where you're being paid less than $10 an hour, like I was, and all of a sudden you're being paid to do something interesting at a far higher rate than you were earning, you sort of don't take that for granted. And I have since gotten significantly higher. I've since been given significantly better pay. I'm now on a sort of flat rate scheme where I'm going to say it's a semi-salary like thing, but also like they're really caring for how much workload I'm doing these days. They don't want me to burn myself out. I am.
So if you don't mind, out of curiosity, so like back when you were kind of starting out, which I know that what you talked about, where it's like you go from like the minimum wage job, which we've all done. You go from this, and then you're doing something that's more interesting, and you get a lot more. You realize later you're like they underpaid me like crazy, but
that's a funny thing. Not to interrupt you or talk over you, but it's a really funny thing because the Drive actually, as a site, so as an IP, it was always kind of a big name. But when I signed on, they were actually they were not nearly as big, at least the site as it was then was not as big as it is now, not nearly.
Yeah.
I think there were actually a fair number of posts that I was writing where they may have. Now I'm speculating here because I don't know what the back end looked like then.
Speculate away.
Is that I actually a fair number of the posts I wrote then probably did not actually make them money. There was a period where there was just trying to actually get consistent people to put out content, and basically the opportunity to do this fell into my lap at a time where I was kind of going, I am not looking forward to getting into a job search. And literally the editor-in-chief at that time, Mike Guy, I got this because he put something up on Reddit like, hey, do you want to write for The Drive in the Cars Reddit? And I had a couple paid blog posts under my wing. I had like a few unpaid ones I put up on my own WordPress just as kind of a portfolio-like thing. I threw that at him. I got the chance. I grabbed it with both hands. I seized the opportunity. It was
Sure, yeah.
I really would say it sort of fell into my lap, and I knew that I had something good going for me, so I really squeezed it for all it was worth, and it has done a lot of good for me.
Well, that's definitely good.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I was actually. It is really hard to contextualize, what somebody. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud here a bit, but given my experience level and the work I was doing at the time, I think actually I was being still paid pretty damn well, especially considering what I was. If you wanted to turn what I was making in my early freelance days into hourly wages, I was making over $15 an hour.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's something.
Yeah. So it's like there are a lot of people who have a lot more experience in the industry who look or would look at those wages and go, "Oh, that's not great." But at the same time, that was terrific given my experience level. That was terrific given my prior income.
So that sounds terrific. I mean, from your perspective, terrific enough.
It was good, and then it kept getting better. Kind of, it grew with me as a professional. So,
which is not always the case for many jobs. So that's I feel you there.
I'd say it's the exception rather than the rule, really.
Yeah.
I would say I've been very lucky. I do happen to know that there's still a fair amount of exploitation of freelance content creators. In fact,
frankly, I'm really surprised to hear your feedback because not that I know a ton of freelance journalists, but like reading things here and there, it does kind of sound like it can be kind of rough in between gigs. And
it can be. I'm very fortunate actually that there has basically been a constant demand for as much as I can put out, basically, which meant I was basically, because I'm living at home still, my income requirements were generally not crazy. I mean, I'm paying rent, but I keep having this thing cross my mind that I want to bring up, but I keep forgetting what it is. There's actually two of them. One, just a few days ago, you'd probably be glad to hear that in general, how people are paid in this industry does actually matter to most people. There's a sort of industry professionals Facebook group where there was some website being torched for their terrible pay rates. People who'd written for them were saying, well, if you negotiate, they will give you better.
Fuck that defense. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
We're going to pay you as little as we can get away with unless you call us out.
Yeah.
I think
mean,
didn't Marx write a book about that or something? Was it Marx? Sorry.
so there was, yeah, in general, I think people actually do believe in this industry that people should be paid for their time and their effort. Um, Sites that try to scrape along on underpaying people don't really seem to retain writers or anything like that.
Huh, so
Um,
it seems that communication between the workers is having a really positive effect. That's an interesting. I just it's one of those, a lot of industries they don't do this, and more people don't think of it. But you're like, wow, so you're just shaming the companies that pay you like shit, and then now the industry pays better. There's an interesting correlation there. I think somebody should look into that.
there's there's also the thing that there is. I can at least speak for the Drive personally. I get the impression that there's a strong culture that, even though it was bought out by a private equity firm last year, I believe it was, I feel like there's been a real strong conversation between editorial and the people on the back end about how they actually do want to build something where they are treating their writers in a way that they can sustain a healthy lifestyle. And I mean, I I feel like generally I have had editorial on my side even when I wasn't, as closely associated as I am now, which is like I'm really kind of amazed that I can say that given the given the gig economy environment. Um,
Yeah, no, that's there's definitely that's definitely good.
I
Yeah,
don't want
really.
to.
It sounds like you're saying we should all get into automotive journalism.
Well, yeah.
No,
So can I just
no,
start
actually,
writing articles and sending them off, or
okay. So if you really wanted, so my advice for people who want to get into automotive media, my first advice is don't, because the on a professional level, I say it's highly risky because there's a fair chance that we're past peak car. I think the industry is going to shrink, and when the industry shrinks, so is the associated media industry. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of publications are gutting their staff and going increasingly with freelancers. So it's a hard industry to get into in times of growth. Even in in this uncertain future, it's even more difficult. Like
When that
any sort
sounds
of
like, sorry to cut you off there. That sounds kind of like just the journalistic environment in general. Like the newspaper industry has been shrinking for
Mhm.
years and
Yeah.
going more
Um,
freelance.
there was a content creator who I used to follow. I won't identify them because I'm not necessarily sure that I want to follow them because I don't know. I got the impression that they have been doing an awful job of managing their reputation, and I don't want to be associated with them. But they said something to the effect of um, online media, like when the crunch comes, um, the first thing to go is the good stuff, ironically, because you
it's
can
not
shovel out
clickbaity enough?
terrible. You can shovel out, yeah, terrible content all day long, low effort stuff that if you package it right, people will click. Um, and the people who are really, 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 really good at something will always have, some demand for their stuff. But people who are pretty good and kind of in the middle, they kind of struggle. So you have to decide where you want to end up in that industry. Are you comfortable making stuff that can kind of take advantage of people's curiosity, or do you want to make really good stuff? And I mean, I hate having my time wasted online by stuff that I'll click and it feels uninformative or
Yeah.
and the like. So I made that decision, and it's not easy to give your best all the time, and you do sometimes feel like you fall short even when you give your best, and sometimes you just do. Sometimes you make mistakes, but I feel like the important thing is not even just for the automotive media environment, but anything that you really want, like if there's some career you really want, you got to really decide how badly do you want it. It's
I
like,
mean, it sounds like, I mean, what you're getting at is how you want to approach that job, you know, and what you want to get out of it. Because, like, you know, me, I used to be like, yeah, I'll give it my all. I want to be proud of my work. I want to be involved. And now that I realize, like, what work is and how it actually functions in the economy, I'm like, I want money to fucking live and money to be happy. Give it to me now, you fucking asshole, and I'm gonna like do enough to make you want to give me more money. But like, I don't feel fulfilled by this work because I'm totally just completely alienated from everything I'm doing. I'm like, I am doing this for a paycheck now, which has got its, you know, there's a downside to that. But so kind of how you approach whether you're putting out clickbait garbage to get that paycheck or you're really trying to add something profound to what you're writing about is kind of where I thought you were going with it, if that makes sense.
that's one of the points I wanted to touch on. Another thing is that, like all just, you know, I guess I'll say like all super desirable careers, it is super highly competitive, and you got to know what you're getting into, because there are other people who would really like my job, and I'm not going to pretend that, you know, I have gotten to it by some Ayn Randian superhero weird.
Yeah.
Because I'm a human being, and I know what weird opportunities I had to get to land here, and then I did my best once I got this shot. But
Sure. I mean,
yeah,
that's the way of the world. That is the way of the world that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge, but that is how it has always worked and probably will always work until hopefully we do something about that.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, there is a degree of wanting to do something about that. You know, working in this sort of enthusiast media industry is what it can largely be, but also there's some serious journalism to be done, especially if you don't want to be another one of those. There's an industry term called a shrimp eater. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but
I have not.
a shrimp eater is basically somebody who is in the media industry, the automotive media industry, for the industry shindigs. Somebody who goes to the junkets, eats the shrimp cocktail, hence the shrimp eater nickname, and kind of does like whatever work to just kind of get as much as they can out of this kind of at times spoil ya industry. But so that is a facet. I mean, car companies will fly people places and put them up in hotels, pay for their meals, and give them new cars to drive. By give them, I mean loan them. But
Yeah.
I decided quite some time ago that like there is there are literally hundreds of those people out there. Nobody needs me to be another one of those. So I, you know, the perspective I take to this is there is probably, you do actually have to take, I think, some fresh perspective to a job like this to really make a mark or excel, do whatever, however you want to put it. To stand out, you really have to try to bring something extra. And I think there is a lot that people are ignoring about the future of the automotive industry and transportation
Oh, yeah.
in the United States
Oh,
in
yeah.
general.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm putting big blocks in everything. I am actively ignoring the state of the world around me.
I'm going on a long tangent here just because I can be pretty long-winded at times, but
You're allowed.
thank you. The short version of it is, well, I don't think I can give the short version of it because I'm still planning to get around to doing like some real research and figuring out whether what I sort of believe is actually backed by science. And hopefully later this year, I'll really be putting out the stuff that matters to me, which is going to try to be influencing how people think about the future of cars and their role in the United States. And I think it is important to have big aspirations like that if you do want to do automotive media, because otherwise,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
makes sense.
who needs another random white guy saying, "Hey, this car is cool and fast. Welcome to my YouTube channel, John's
Whoa.
Garage."
Hold on now. I am going to be on this podcast a lot saying this car is cool and fast and new and stuff. I'm going to be saying a lot of that. Don't blow up my spot here.
Oh no. But you get where I'm coming from.
I don't call myself a fucking journalist, though. I call myself a white guy who likes a fast car now and then.
I'm going to cut automotive journalism off at the pass and just preemptively start writing articles about like how to keep your car on the road now that the industry has collapsed.
That'll be a really interesting. There's a lot to happen with 3D printing there. I don't know a ton about additive manufacturing, not from a practical standpoint. I know how laser sintering works, but
It's not, like if you want high strength, 3D printing is not there yet, and likely does not have that capacity because of the way on the microscopic level, the way the metal behaves when it's like laser welded. It's not prone to making a super strong material. Who knows what breakthroughs will come along, but like I have heard it said that it's just not in the cards for that. But I say that as a machinist who just, wants to be machining.
Yeah, it's definitely not for like aircraft grade stuff. I mean, I think NASA or whatever aerospace companies have been doing something with like laser printed metal rocket motor parts, but like, and I think Koenigsegg did 3D printed turbine housings for some of their cars. But as far as like Brandon, what you were saying about like maintaining older vehicles, I know that on the first gen MR2s, the C-pillar trim, the plastic trim on those tends to break because they're 30 years old or whatever. And there are people 3D printing replacement parts for that. So that's kind of, an application. If it's just something cosmetic or, not very, doesn't require a lot of structural strength, it can be used for that for sure.
I've been told you can use a manila envelope for a gasket in a pinch.
Yeah. I think I've done that.
In the context of like a friend of mine was traveling somewhere in Central America and he is a mechanic and he was like, yeah, they would just cut it out like gasket paper.
Yeah.
I've done that for
gaskets
mopeds.
made out of paper.
Yeah.
It's like paper composites or something like that.
So what would they like fold it over a bunch of times and then cut it out?
No.
I remember him telling me this story forever ago before I was like super deep into cars, so I'm not really sure.
I think it's fine for like an intake gasket, something that doesn't get super hot and doesn't see a lot of pressure, but you still want to have a good seal on it, like to vacuum or whatever. Yeah. Like I've used it on mopeds. I've used cardboard or paper gaskets to like put the case halves together, like the crankcase halves.
All right.
And
who needs gaskets when you've got RTV?
Yeah, well,
yeah, true. That's a good point.
To step back a little bit in the conversation, I don't know if anyone has heard of Inconel powder.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about that, but that seems to be somewhat promising as far as 3D printed materials go. I'm not sure of the long-term durability or what kind of pressures it could handle or heat.
You said Inconel powder?
Inconel powder, yes.
Okay,
so it's like
I work with a lot of Inconel, so I know a little bit about that, but I've never heard anything about the powder.
Yeah, I come across Inconel parts in various industrial like control valves and stuff, so I've got some familiarity with that, but never the powder. That seems interesting because Inconel is a pretty interesting alloy. Like you can do a lot.
I work with a lot of Inconel and Monel, which is the copper equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Papadakis Racing, I'm sure you've heard the name before if you're into drag racing. They have a video on YouTube making a turbo manifold out of Inconel powder and 3D printing it.
Yeah, I think that floated across my radar.
Yeah, it was uploaded about a month ago. So Probably not a lot of torture testing for that yet, but I'd be interested to see how that shakes out in the future.
I'm interested in that, yeah, because turbo manifolds are just very expensive and they're a pain in the ass.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So specifically, the thing that I've heard is a problem with laser printing any sort of metallic thing is it's basically a welding process. And if you've done any welding, you know the way that the material will like kind of glob together. Like, not if you're welding well, but there's always going to be a certain element where like the material behaves in a slightly uncontrollable way. And when you are 3D printing, all you're doing is welding on a much smaller scale. So you still have inconsistencies where it'll like blob up, but on like I don't want to say molecular or microscopic scale, but it might be that small. I'm not really sure. I've actually watched videos under like a microscope where they were laser welding, and it demonstrated exactly what was going on. Now, I don't know how much that weakens it, but like you're probably never gonna like 3D print a crank, or like a connecting rod.
Yeah, I assume the high stress parts are not going to be really viable for that. Just like you said, there's so many stress points in something that's basically been welded together millimeter by millimeter, essentially.
Yeah.
There was someone on, I think it was in Europe somewhere, claiming that they 3D printed connecting rods with carbon fiber inserts in them or something, but made of plastic or resin or something.
Like CFRP, really?
I don't know, but like there wasn't a whole lot of proof that they actually did this and made it function. So who knows? But as far as Inconel, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but there's a moped forum called Moped Army. And I remember a while ago on there was a guy that welds with Inconel, kind of like Brandon. And he saved up all the little scrap pieces of Inconel sheet metal that he had at his job and made a expansion pipe for his 50cc moped out of Inconel. So it probably would have cost like $3,000, like if it was something that was on sale. But he's like, yeah, I just made this out of scrap, and because I could. And
it also mysteriously weighs 40 pounds.
Oh no, I mean, Inconel, isn't it pretty lightweight for?
No, it's heavy as fuck.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
It's basically all nickel. Okay.
I thought he was saying that it was like super thin stuff, so that it was real lightweight, and it's still able to hold up to the higher temperatures of an exhaust. But I don't know.
Yeah, the pros of Inconel for anybody who's really into metallurgy here. No, it's super corrosion resistant under almost any circumstances. Like, and I will mix it up a little bit with Monel because they have very similar properties. But yeah, like it's just really reliable under the worst conditions that you can operate it in. Like it's popular for use in like nuclear power plants and submarines where it's going to be like constantly exposed to salt water and like high temperatures and so on and so forth. And it's just like, yeah, fine, I'm cool with this. But it's dumb heavy.
Yeah. Oh, and radiation that'll make a lot of things brittle, a lot of steel and stuff.
I only know specifically about its resistance to any problems as a result of like salt water, high pressure, temperature, stuff like that. That's why Inconel is popular for exhaust valves.
That makes sense.
It's also used in aerospace some, isn't it?
Like for I want to say like inside of turbine engines and stuff.
I don't know that to be true, but I would not be surprised. It's a pretty spectacular metal.
I thought it was also pretty tough to machine as well, but
dude, I use so much stainless Inconel and Monel machining it, like it just all feels the same to me. At this point, I'm just shocked when somebody hands me a piece of mild steel, and I'm like, this is weirdly easy. I've done very little welding of it though, man. It's weird to weld. You have to like back purge it and everything. It's not straightforward.
Yeah. Sorry if I derailed the conversation into Inconel metallurgy.
No worries.
I'm sorry if I continued on that path.
Well, Too bad. The listeners are going to have to learn a little metallurgy. Oh well.
Oh well, poor them.
I don't know. Back to like the kind of freelance journalism stuff. We did touch on it a while back, but then we kind of meandered away. But I was curious, like in this kind of industry, what were you kind of when you started out and kind of like now? How many articles are you writing like a day or a month or what? Is it like you write 2 articles a month and you're good, but like they're really well researched? Or is it you're doing 4 articles a day that require a moderate amount of work? Or, and what was it when you were like starting out, especially when you said you were doing like $25 an article or whatever versus like kind of where you're at now? Is it less? Is it more? Just curious.
Also, are you one of the people that's been writing articles on 3D renderings of cars? Because if so, I'm going to need your address for a bomb I'm going to send you.
Okay, real funny thing.
Don't threaten the guests.
Here's the
okay?
admission.
I will threaten anyone who persistently writes those articles.
Well, then you may want to write a sternly worded letter to a. Oh, dare I?
Damn it! If you really did this, now I'm going to get called out for my threats being empty.
Okay, so number one, I have actually done a few, and by a few I mean actually a fairly small number, because let's just say I'm not doing render articles anymore. And we regularly make fun of a certain website that I think I will not name, who puts them out very, very regularly. I'd rather stay on the safe side there.
Yeah, we're guessing that this podcast is going to have about 6 listeners, but
Even
it could have
5 of them are on it.
it could wind up having enough that you have a problem. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
probably
also
one of
kidding.
those.
I'm not going to listen to this.
We're
podcast.
not lawyers, by the way. So
I know,
Yeah.
but at the same
fuck
time,
off. We don't know what we're doing.
at the same time, like this is a very small industry in general, and there's like kind of in assuming that I get vaccinated and that I can again travel for work. It is inevitable that I will run into somebody who works for them, and I don't want to be the guy who's on record making fun of a rival publication for something that not all readers like.
I was joking. I definitely know who you're talking about.
I have a feeling you do too. I think you know. But to get back to the volume question, which is what you're asking. So starting out, like, because there was literally the appetite for as much as I could put out, and quality varied. I did genuinely try, but I didn't. Not all stories were interesting, and there were some times where I was still very obviously learning about the subject matter. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
Initially, like they had a target. They're like, oh well, if it's like, well, we're hoping for yay many posts from you per week. And I was like, I was very easily hitting that target. There was a period where I was regularly doing, I would say, between 20 and 30 per week. And that's like leaving myself 2 days off. Yeah. But that was also during that was during the period where there was a lot of publishing almost anything going on, because that was a part of the Drive's history. There was a period where it was functionally an aggregator site, but management didn't want it to be just that. So, the editors, they really stepped things up, and in time, like, they basically organized with me where they upped my rate per article, and they were like, okay, we don't expect as many posts from you at this new pay scale, but of course we're going to expect, that much extra effort. And it's at the point right now where they're basically just, it is sort of like this informal agreement. I mean, there is a degree of formality, but the editors have the freedom to basically decide whether or not I'm living up to their performance. And so far, I have had no complaints whatsoever in the multiple months on my sort of current pay grade. It's I don't know how much of it I can discuss. It is actually, the best arrangement I've had so far. I would say actually my current output is probably the lowest it's ever been over time, but at the same time, I have put out enough things that have trafficked so well and reflected well enough on the site that, I don't feel my workload is outrageous, but at the same time, I feel like, well, I know because they've told me that they're very glad with what's going on. So,
Yeah, so it is higher quality
mhm,
writing, probably a little more research involved, and
definitely.
source checking. Okay, I mean that's cool. I mean that's really what I'm curious about. That kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, a higher degree of journalism, and then better writing. And I try to keep both of them kind of as I try to keep as high of standards as I can for my own work, because I really actually hate putting out stuff that I wouldn't myself read. And I mean, you guys work in creative fields. Like, I know you would hate if you sent off machining that you felt was really not good for the most part. I mean,
I don't know about that, Brandon. How would you feel?
What's going on?
my guess is, as somebody who does actually make stuff, in the machining field, you might actually feel kind of bad if you were sending off stuff that was utter schlock. If it,
You would think so.
Yeah,
It really depends on how much of a dick my boss has been that day.
I hear you.
No,
there,
I
but-
routinely hold like insane tolerances, and I'm pretty proud of it. Like,
Yeah.
I can machine something on a lathe and keep it to within 1/10,000th of an inch.
It's like good work to some degree is its own reward. There were a few times where now I'm actually going to take the side of the editors on this one. There were a few times where I unsolicited turned in monstrous articles. I'm talking like 5,000 words, basically without asking them if they wanted it, and they paid me considerably less than my normal rate, but that's because it was also sort of stuff that there were no arrangements for. And by less than my normal rate, I'm talking about like if you want to extrapolate that to dollars per word. But pretty much all of those were scenarios where like I really was doing passion projects. And frankly, like the chance to do a passion project that was paid at that point in my career was something I appreciated.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
So, I mean, I don't want to defend a model in media industries of people being underpaid for overwork, but like, I mean, I'm trying to take a holistic view of my skill and experience level throughout this job, which I've been doing for a good 4 years now, and I think my compensation has generally and I'd say I'm extremely fortunate in this. My compensation has generally scaled with the quality of work I've been doing most of the way through it. So that's not probably as exciting or dramatic as you could hear from some people. I do know that there are sites that do underpay people, and they have trouble keeping consistent content coming in.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Again, you would kind of expect that, where it's and they're probably wondering, oh, gee, why do we have a problem getting people to work for us? And it's like, well, I have some thoughts, you fucking clowns.
At the opposite end, there is a good, respectable legacy publication that I won't name, who tried to keep as many people on as staff as they could, and they basically ended up gutting their entire staff because they weren't bringing in enough money to keep,
Yeah,
to pay
keep
for
the doors open.
yeah, to
that makes
pay
sense.
for the people. So it's if I'm gonna really boil it down to a simple problem, it's that if people want free online media, and if they want stuff free, they kind of have to expect there to be, uh, if you're not paying,
There's a cost.
y-
There is a
there,
cost
there
to
is a
that.
cost. Um, and the way I put it with anything that's online, if you're not paying, you are to a degree the product. It's true of social media. And well, if you're reading free news or free content of any kind, you're being advertised to. You are an audience being sold to advertisers.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's I would think pretty much anyone listening to our podcast, actually, unless I don't know who's listening, so I have no idea what that looks like. But anyone who is a leftist should be at least mildly familiar with that concept, which has been spoken about, by like Noam Chomsky and like manufacturing consent, or I think I haven't read it, but I would imagine Michael Parenti's Inventing Reality is talks about the similar thing where it's like, again, if you're not paying, guess what? You're the product. You are. That is a big. That's pretty much how all media works now. It's almost you almost can't pay for media. We no longer expect. We now expect free media in a way that we didn't necessarily in the past. And so now more and more so, we are the commodities that are being bought and sold here. We're cattle being, kind of guided into, oh, come to our media site to look at stuff. We'll tell you what you want to hear, of course, because we want you to see our advertisers. So yeah, that's so. I would think a lot of people are pretty familiar with that concept, but like I said, I don't know what our listeners look like yet. So who knows? Maybe they're not. Maybe they'll learn something.
And to build on something you said, I think it is something worth understanding, regardless of political affiliation, that the online, any sort of free media like that, only exists because advertisers are paying the people who are putting out the stuff you go there for. And, there's a degree of that being true for professional sports as well. The ads there. You go to Coors
Oh, yeah.
Field, guess who's paying for that Coors name to be there? The reason why I bring that up is because my own mechanic, he was kind of like bothered at crap he was reading, and I basically had to tell him, hey, if you don't like reading really terrible stuff, don't click on stuff that looks like it'll be terrible, because when you read stuff, you are readership, and your readership is money to the people that you are,
Yeah, you are giving them, by giving them your eyes, by clicking on that article just to see it, you're giving them their money.
Yes.
And they're going to keep on putting out crap because you keep clicking on it.
That is unfortunately the nature of kind of, of low quality content farms. And those do exist in the automotive media sphere. I don't need to tell you. I won't point any fingers, but there are a couple pretty egregious ones on YouTube. There are, I would say it's less of a thing with written media these days, because it's not new media. I would say the problems with written digital with automotive writing in the digital sphere is that not necessarily all the writing or the journalism is great, although you will in general find people make an earnest attempt to make stuff good, even if
I could see that.
I mean, I say that based on reading sites that don't have as high of journalistic standards. You do see people who are clearly trying. Sometimes you do read some pretty dang good stuff on the offbeat sort of C grade sites, but
I have a sort of hypothetical question. Let's say, James, if let's say in the future there's a communist revolution, capitalism is abolished. Presumably, internal combustion engines probably aren't being manufactured anymore. Do you think you would still be writing about cars or something else, or or be doing some other job?
I I think there's actually when I say there are some less than hypotheticals to be answered about that, I think I have actually considered, like, okay, what do I do? Well, obviously, when COVID was starting to rear its head and tons of people were losing their jobs, one of my first thoughts was, okay, what's my next step if my bubble pops? Um, and I suppose to tie this back to what you're asking, which is sort of like, what is the role of automotive media in the future? Is that more what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, I
Or like,
guess
what was
just
the
like if, let's say, if what you do as your vocation is not connected to how you make your living. Like, let's say your food and shelter, et cetera, is provided for you. What would you pursue as your vocation in an ideal situation?
Uh, okay, like how idyllic are we talking? Are we talking
As much as
because
you want to.
okay, I'm I feel free comfortable talking about the idyllic. I would see myself continuing to do what I do, probably with a slightly more narrow focus on the weird passion project stuff. You know, ideally while, say, traveling this continent and the many others out there. There are plenty parts. There is like there is so much to automotive and transportational culture in general that is of immense interest to me that you can't experience in the United States. Like it'd be cool to go ride with the Dajiban guys over in Japan, or go and just drive the autobahn in the crappiest thing that you can get approved by the German TUV. I would
So
see there
so
being
it so you mean to say that not only would you not sit at home and do nothing, if you were taking it, your work would probably get better. You would enjoy your life more, which would also therefore make your work even better from there. Is that what I'm getting here?
I think that is a yes. Um,
Because
and
Fox News was saying that that's not the case, and I've been really curious about this.
there's to engage with
With
to
a
engage
very
with what
not
you're saying.
serious person.
Yeah, no, to engage with that, the Fox News attitude towards whether towards people's motivations is that people need to be cajoled into it. Whereas, I mean, the fact is, human beings develop emotional attachments to certain things from a very young age, and like people will actually go out of their way to try to make things of their own volition. Like we have seen this throughout history. Um, if you want good examples, just like go look at everything from ancient cave art to the weird passion projects in any field you can imagine that are in no way commercializable. I mean,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
no, that makes a lot of sense.
to me that's obviously that's the answer. Is of course this stuff has always been around. We don't need to force people like you have to work. I would keep working. In fact, I'd probably have multiple jobs. No,
oh,
I wouldn't
I
want to have
definitely would.
not like working 40 hours or a million hours. I'm saying Tuesdays I do this job, Wednesdays I do that job, Thursdays I take a day off, and maybe Friday I work at a different place. A little
Do you
little
want
variety.
Do you want a really interesting piece of fiction that I made Bryant read?
I was just
Set
about to bring
in
this up.
a universe something like this? Why? Were you about to bring up what football will look like in the future?
Yes.
Okay, so I cannot possibly recommend a piece of fiction called 17776, or some or How Football Will Look in the Future. It sounds kind of like, huh? It's also really hard to describe, but it basically is trying to ask the question, what do humans do when there are no stakes because everything is taken care of? And it is imaginative science fiction, but it is, I think, also in a sort of very funny way, sort of vaguely realistic in that sense, but it's also told from a really unusual perspective. I don't want to give away too much because it's a bizarre conceit. I don't want to try to sell it on its premise because doing that kind of can spoil some of what's interesting about it. But if you have 3 hours to read something really interesting, I would say that.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. I'll second that. It's really interesting. I haven't read the sequel that you were telling me about. That's about college football or something.
Oh God!
But
you will love that because it's it's the same setting, a little bit further down the road, slightly different scenario, with the batshit turned up. The batshit turned up to 12, and sort of the historical weird. There's just this web of historical context to it that's kind of incredible, because like every little tidbit you go, wait, somebody had to either know about that before or research that and then stitch together all these completely unrelated things into a narrative that's somehow incredible.
yeah,
It's this hyper associative kind of media that is like just made for people with ADHD.
yeah. And it was written by John Boyce. Is that the guy's name, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if you're listening to this podcast, you might know him. He's been on Chapo Trap House a couple times. He collaborated with Felix Biederman on a couple projects too, writing about sports and stuff.
Yeah. Absolute would recommend. There's probably somewhere you want to take this next. I've just been rambling on for a bit, but
No, it's fine. I didn't. I mean, at least I didn't have any agenda necessarily. I think we've covered everything that I had.
Yeah, I
Should
think
we
I mean,
wrap
I think
up,
we've
or,
covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is probably a pretty good place to leave it.
all right.
Well, James, anything that you wanna plug while we're here, other than your articles on the Drive?
Well, other than my column on the Drive, please look me up. I would say, and aside from everything John Boyce has ever made, oh, sorry, my cup just fell over. I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay. Well, check out James on the Drive. He's always writing about something interesting. We'll hopefully have you on again to talk about
cars, which we forgot to get to.
About what?
Soviet rally cars.
Oh no, that I think we'll save that for another one. Hopefully,
Right.
if we can get you on again.
Yeah, that'll be its own topic, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the best version of those narratives are going to be the ones I wrote there, because I don't have the kind of encyclopedic knowledge to tell those verbally.
Yeah. Well, I guess listeners, if you want a little preview of what we might be covering in the future, go check out James's articles on Soviet rally cars. I think there was a Lada and a Moscovich or something.
Yeah, the Lada
think those are the
Samara
ones.
EVA and the Moskvich 2141 KR, I think.
Yeah, pretty interesting stories for both of those.
So that first one, did it make a lot of power?
Depends on. Well, wait.
just say it made more than 400.
No.
It made more than 400, right?
No.
It made more than 400, right?
No.
It made more than 400, right?
It made 350.
I'll take
Close
it.
enough. It made, yeah, that's,
I mean, honestly, considering that was being made from a Lada, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, honestly, if you had said 50 horsepower, that would still be a lot of power.
All right. Well, I think we've rambled on enough about Inconel and metallurgy and MR2s, and this will probably be a two-parter. I mean, we've been going for
I think so.
Almost 3 hours. So, yeah, thanks for being on, James. Thanks for being a good sport, and
Thanks for having me.
yeah, hopefully we'll have you on again.
Cool. Thanks, James.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to stop recording now.
We don't think you fight fire with fire fists, we think you fight fire with water fists. We gonna fight racism, not with racism, but we gonna fight with solidarity. We said we're not gonna fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we going to fight it with socialism.
Amazingly, or not so amazingly, Cuba's crime rate is one of the lowest in the entire hemispheres. Oddly enough, it seems that when people have their basic human needs met, they're less likely to commit crimes.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
The free market mythology, it argues that the most ruthless, selfish, opportunistic, greedy, calculating plunderers, applying the most heartless measures in cold-blooded pursuit of corporate interest and wealth accumulation, will produce the best results for all of us. Through something called the invisible hand.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.